in silence through the night. What a thrill. I'm searching and I'll melt into you. What a fear in my heart, but you're so supreme.
Metal Gear Solid 3. This time, I have a pre-release story. I remember the screens for this game and the trailers. We were all kind of disappointed that we were getting a prequel instead of a sequel. But, at the same time, we all figured we were playing as Big Boss instead of Solid Snake. We were right, of course. There was a sense of mystique to Big Boss's story, as most of us hadn't played the original MSX2 games. What was Big Boss? Was he a hero? Was he an anti-hero? Was he always a villain? Well, that's what we were going to find out. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater was released in November 2004 for the PlayStation 2. It has since sold over 4 million copies worldwide. Released in the middle of this generation of consoles, Metal Gear Solid 3's graphics still hold up well even today, with the HD version just doing a fine cleanup. It received several re-releases such as Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence in 2006, which included a new 3D-based camera, while the game still has the option for a top-down camera view. Personally, I don't understand why Kojima opted to continue with the top-down camera, as it doesn't have the excuse of intentionally replicating the feel of the original game. It's also been re-released as part of the Metal Gear Solid Essential Collection and the Metal Gear Solid HD Edition. It also received a port to the Nintendo 3DS in 2012. Set in 1964 at the height of the Cold War, Naked Snake is assigned by Major Zero to rescue a scientist named Sokolov, who seeks to defect from the Soviet Union. Sokolov is developing a mobile tank known as the Shagohod. Snake is sent to Salino Yards to rescue Sokolov with the aid of Major Zero, paramedic who serves as your food expertise, Sigan, who is actually a young Donald Anderson from the first Metal Gear Solid, though the game doesn't draw attention to this, and the Boss, Snake's mentor and a hero from World War II. She and her Cobra unit are legends who helped end the war. Here we get our introduction to the game. Compared to its predecessors, Metal Gear Solid 3 places more emphasis on the outside environment. Snake must traverse through jungles, forests, and mountains to reach his destination. Thus, more emphasis is placed on crawling to avoid guards. Snake also has a new gameplay mechanic, the introduction on CQC, Close Quarters Combat. Snake can interrogate enemies, slit their throats, throw them to the ground, and hold them up or use them as shields when firing at enemies. There are also new ways of clearing the area of guards, seen here where you use a beehive to scare off some guards. Snake also has access to camouflage, meaning Snake can blend in with the environment to better evade enemy detection. The radar is also gone, as Kojima felt players were relying too much on the radar to avoid enemy sights instead of using their own senses, so that's why the radar is gone. It's fortunate that Kojima added the 3D camera to the Subsistence re-release, as it really works better with the lack of a radar. Eventually, Snake finds and rescues Sokolov, who fears the arrival of Colonel Volgin, a Gru colonel who desires the Shagohod's power. Before Snake can get Sokolov to safety, we are introduced to a young Ocelot who decides to make himself known by... yeah. But Snake proves himself to be the superior warrior, and we begin to see the beginnings of Ocelot's infatuation with Snake.
Pretty good.
Snake meets up with Sokolov, who is captured by the Cobra unit. Ball shows up with Colonel Volgin, stating her intentions to defect to the Soviet Union. Snake is easily defeated and cast into the river.
The new blood has been rejected.
From here on, you're essentially treated to the survival viewer, and that Snake will suffer real-time injuries throughout the game, and the only way to heal them is to go to survival viewer and treat the injuries using the proper tools. Snake's health also can't be healed using rations like in previous games, but instead goes up naturally depending on how much stamina you have. The only way to keep your stamina up is to hunt for food in the jungle, which means Snake will have to eat various animals to survive, such as snakes, goats, crabs, frogs, and rats. It's fine in theory, it's just the problem is that it requires you to pause the game, select food, eat it, and get your stamina back up. It's a reoccurring problem with the game is that you have to constantly pause to select the tool you need. It can get a little tedious. Snake is rescued by Major Zero and Paramedic, but unfortunately Vulcan uses an American-made nuke to destroy Sokolov's facility.
Colonel!
With this, the United States is framed for the attack, and a week later Snake is sent back to Russia for Operation Snake Eater. He must find and rescue Sokolov, destroy the Shagohod, and eliminate the boss to prove the United States' innocence. Snake encounters the boss again, but once again proceeds to show just how far below her he is. With no weapons, Snake makes his way to where Sokolov was being held and meets up with Eva, a KGB spy. Snake notices Eva's enhancements. Here you get your first boss of sorts with the Ocelot unit. It's easy to sneak around and take them all out through various means. Snake once again continues to mentor Ocelot after Eva... Okay. Following this, you have to make your way through a swamp, and a little tidbit here, if you take out this helicopter with TNT, it won't show up later in the game. It's little tidbits like this that make Metal Gear Solid games stand out. After that, you face off against your first true boss fight, Ocelot. It's a nice little callback to the opening boss battle of Metal Gear Solid 1. This is the only place where I find tactical use for the ability to aim your gun while hanging from a ledge or tree branch. After you beat Ocelot, you're interrupted by a swarm of bees. Snake trips and stumbles into a cave. The cave can take a while to get used to because of how dark it is, but eventually you make your way out and you'll come across your first Cobra boss fight, the Pain. The Pain is a guy with hornets all over his body. That's his motif. One of my problems with the Cobra unit is that their whole gimmick is that they're named after the emotion they feel the most in battle. But that really doesn't affect the boss battles too much. The Pain just shoots bees at you, which I guess counts as pain, but it's still pushing it. The boss battle is fairly easy too. Just hide under the water and wait for the bees to no longer cover him, and just pop back out and shoot him while he's vulnerable. After that, he'll go down and Snake will make his way to a facility where he just misses Sokolov. Following that, Snake will make his way to Grant's research lab, and this is one of the few inside portions of the game. You'll find Snake can do pretty much everything he can do in Metal Gear Solid 2. Hide people in lockers and hang from railings. Snake will meet Grant. Gee, who is this guy? Why is he so important? Oh, the original designer of Metal Gear. That's how he gets the idea. Interesting.
Step forward in weapons development.
Metal Gear.
Following this comes the boss fight with the Fear. The Fear is an acrobatic kind of fighter, always leaping from trees, but I really don't understand what he has to do with Fear. But after a while, it's pretty easy to figure out where he's going, even if you foolishly don't have the thermal goggles like I did here. The game really doesn't waste any time in introducing you to the next boss fight, the end. Now this is one of the most unique boss fights in any video game. It spans 4 whole areas, and you must find where the end is hiding. It's pretty easy if you use the thermal goggles, but part of the challenge is to find him yourself. The game also makes it possible to skip the boss battle if you so choose, which I didn't record. And you can skip it by setting your console's game clock about a week or 2 ahead and he will die of old age. That out of the way, Snake heads up a mountain where he meets up with Eva, and we get more character insight. We see numerous similarities that Snake has with his son.
Kill her now? That's your mission, isn't it? Assassinating the boss? Snake? Is there anyone you like? Someone special?
I've never been interested in other people's lives.
Is there anyone you like?
I've never been interested in anyone else's life.
So you are all alone. Just like Mantis said.
Other people just complicate my life. I don't like to get involved.
After that, he spies on Vulcan and Ocelot. Vulcan has killed Grant, suspecting him to be a spy, but knows there's a transmitter in one of his shoes. One of the things I find interesting in this scene is that Ocelot shows open defiance of Vulcan and his methods. And Vulcan doesn't really do anything about it except threaten him. Since Vulcan practically raised Ocelot, I wonder if Vulcan has some fatherly feelings towards him. But even if he does, they're probably not very high. Following that, Snake heads through an underground corridor and comes across the Fury. Now this is when I think Kojima was really pushing it. I mean, an astronaut that hovers in the air? In fact, Metal Gear Solid 3 has guards using hovercrafts, which I'm pretty sure shouldn't be applied in the 1960s, but it's a minor complaint. Metal Gear has always advanced technology in each game, since up to that point each game had taken place in a year that was in the future. This game takes place in the 60s. It'll get even more complicated when we get to Metal Gear Solid 5, which is something akin to iPhone in the 1970s and 80s. Anyway, you have to overcome the dark, narrow corridors of the Fury's boss arena, but once you do that, he'll go down pretty easy. With that, Snake will make his way inside Grozny Grad. At this point, the game takes in some self-indulgent take-thats, particularly towards the character Raiden with the character Rykov, which allows you to beat up or even kill him if you so wish. Following that, Snake encounters Sokolov again, but sadly the Doctor refuses to escape, fearing that he will once again be used to create weapons of mass destruction. Snake is caught and Vulcan gives Snake the beating of his life. Following another round of torture in which Snake loses one of his eyes. Jesus. Snake escapes and makes his way out of the sewer. Following this, you have a boss encounter with the Sorrow. Well, I hesitate to say boss because it's really more of a test to see how many people the player has killed throughout the game. If you've kept the killing to a minimum, then you won't have very many enemies coming at you. But if you went on a killing spree, enemies will be coming at you like no other. Following this, Eva will meet up with Snake and she'll try to make the moves, but he refuses. With that, Snake heads back into Grozny Grad and plants C3 charges on the Shagohod. Snake tries to escape, but Eva is caught and revealed as a spy, and Vulcan explains the Philosopher's legacy. Yes, the Philosophers are essentially a precursor to the Patriots. Following that, Snake and Vulcan fight. Vulcan is essentially a thug, but damn if he isn't intimidating. Ocelot has also come to maintain a level of respect for Snake as a soldier. After you beat Vulcan, Snake makes his way out of the hangar and begins to make his escape with Eva. But then comes the Shagohod. Chases Snake and Eva throughout Grozny Grad. This is the most cinematic chase I've ever seen, with the camera often highlighting how crazy the action gets. Following this, the game transitions into a boss fight with the Shagohod proper. There's two phases. The phase where you're on the motorcycle with Eva, and when Vulcan hooks himself up to the Shagohod to keep it running. This boss battle becomes fairly easy when you realize that it takes just a couple of sniper shots to the head to bring Vulcan down.
Who's afraid of a little thunder?
Fried by a bolt of lightning. A fitting end.
Following yet another motorcycle chase, Snake must escort an injured Eva to the lake where the Wig and the boss are waiting. It's a fairly standard escort mission, and Eva can still handle herself, so it's not like you're babysitting her. Following this, Snake confronts the boss, who finally lets everything all out.
I've never talked this much about myself before. Thanks. Thanks for listening to me. I feel content. Snake? Commence the operation. I raised you. I loved you. I've given you weapons, taught you techniques, endowed you with knowledge.
And with nothing else left, Snake and the boss face off. I like how quiet the background is during this fight. I have to think that was Kojima's intention, except for the part where the Snake Eater theme starts playing. As Matthew Matassa stated, it's probably because of the differences in culture between Japanese and English. It also highlights Snake's growth as a fighter, as you can break out of her CQC holds, whereas before he couldn't beat her at all. Eventually the boss will go down, and the game forces you to pull the trigger yourself.
A patriot? Why are you giving me this?
Jack. Or should I say, Snake. You're a wonderful man. Kill me. Kill me now. Do it. There's only room for one boss and one snake.
With the boss dead, Snake has one more tussle with Ocelot, but both leave on good terms, and Snake and Eva seem to have their moment. However, that next morning, Snake wakes up alone. It turns out Eva was actually a spy for the Chinese sent to retrieve the Philosopher's legacy. While the boss wasn't really a traitor, she just had to pretend to be, but when Vulcan fired the nuke at Sloglaw's facility, the government would have to eliminate the boss to prove their innocence, and Snake was picked to do it. Snake is awarded the title of Big Boss, but he can't help but feel empty. It's a hollow victory after all.
Big Boss.
In your memory. Not as a soldier, but as a woman. But she was forbidden to tell you herself. And that's why she told me. Snake. History will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot.
I always tear up a little at that scene. Metal Gear Solid 3's plot is much more simple and back to basics, and I imagine that was probably the intention after the controversial response to the complex plot of Metal Gear Solid 2. All in all, it works wonders. Snake Eater's a very simple story, but strength comes in the characters, and that's what Snake Eater does really well. Naked Snake, or Big Boss, is very likable. This little smirky ass here says all you need to know about him. It's something that sets him apart from his son, Solid Snake. Yet he's still a character who struggles to live up to his mentor's legacy. And by the end of it, we see the beginning of his eventual turn into the villain we know from the Metal Gear games. The boss is an icon in the sense that she's everything everyone aspires to, and it's her legacy that becomes what every character hopes to be. She wants the world to be made whole again, yet the driving question of what her will is and how people define it is what will cause much of the conflict of the series, as we will go into in the next game. Ocelot starts off this game as a young, arrogant major, but by the end of the game he becomes likable due to his increasing infatuation, admiration of Snake. We also see his beginnings of his taste for torture. He's also revealed as a double agent for the CIA, but here's where we get to see Ocelot's true loyalty, which I will touch upon in Metal Gear Solid 4. Eva
Want
is
some?
eye candy,
No, thanks.
and the game will pretty much make you aware of that. Granted, it's not as
Don't
bad
like
as later
snakes.
games
Not
will
for
be.
dinner.
At least here it serves as a purpose in that she wants to bone Snake.
Didn't you have
And
to
Snake's
keep it
disinterest adds more character to
In
him.
my training, we all...
Yeah, the whole she was really Tatiana is pretty obvious to see coming, but it gets the job done, I suppose.
But I can't get too
The
close.
crew, Major Zero, Paramedic, and Stingant, aren't really fleshed out a ton. They're quirky and entertaining, though. Major Zero being a big James Bond fan, so the game is self-aware of its inspirations.
It was all
Now, I'm not a
drama
huge
staged
James
by
Bond fan,
Washington,
but it's
so
pretty
they had
obvious
their
Snake
hands
here
on
draws
the
heavily from
philosopher's
early
legacy.
Bond movies.
And the
Paramedic
voice
is a huge
was
movie
Bond
geek, and
show.
Stingant is, well, quirky, but he doesn't really come across as a young Donald Anderson.
And just
That far.
The theme of Metal Gear Solid 3 is scene. Scene deals heavily with cultural relativism. The idea that concepts such as right and wrong or allies and enemies are not absolute or eternal, but instead are personal and transitive, shaped by our cultures and the times we live in. It's reflective of how America and Russia are no longer enemies in the 21st century. The boss's scene essentially forces her to give her life, and Naked Snake has no control of it. Though he does not know it, she wanted him to kill her to prove his loyalty and mission. This creates an interesting parallel when Solid Snake confronts him years later in Zanzibar land.
Is my life by your own hand. One must die, and one must live. No victory, no defeat. The survivor will carry on the fight. It is our destiny. The one who survives will inherit the title of boss.
Well, that was fun. Metal Gear Solid 3 is quite possibly my favorite Metal Gear Solid game. But after this prequel, it was time to return to the present. It was time to wrap everything up. Next time, we'll take a look at Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Thanks for watching, and take care.